Good morning. Oh,
Are we recording?
we're live. I changed the painting for you.
Let's talk about that first.
It's the Annunciation. I picked it because I thought you'd like the look on Mary's face as Gabriel's explaining what's going to go on to her, and I love the look on her face. She's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
I think we should make our format unique by starting out every video talking about a painting from that period. So who's the artist?
Fra Angelico. It's like from the 1600s.
I didn't know it was Mary. It just looked like a blonde. Well, who's Mary? Who's the one with the Mary? The one with the curls or the?
It's like here. I'll put it up closer. But you see, just like no, the blonde with the long hair. You see the look on her face though? She's like, "What?" I should get here. I'll get a proper copy of the painting. Hold on, and I'll put it up so people can see it better.
Yeah, I've updated our description in the channel. I don't know if you saw the change. So it's not just about technology. I guess when that came out, that was a piece of technology. Just painting technique is technology back then.
Well, I can't find it.
Well, we'll put a link in the description for
maybe
art connoisseurs.
Anyway, I just liked the look on her face. It felt very, because all that sort of 16th century medieval art is very formal, and I just like the.
They don't have expressions.
I mean, they're sort of set pieces, so they tend not to be that. They tend to have these neutral facial expressions because the point of the work is to sort of like it's more of an idea than an actual story. The Annunciation is a thing that happened, but it's sort of the beginnings of the introduction of narrative into art, right? If you go back and look at classical art, there's not a lot of narrative in the art. It's like a picture, it's a statue of Apollo, and it's just meant to evoke the idea of Apollo. Whereas, there's like today we like to have art that tells a story. Like, what does it mean? You look at a squiggly abstract thing, right? People ask, what does it mean? And then all the fancy art people go, you can't ask that. That's not how it works. Shows you're
we should mention our background, denominational background, just for those who are wondering, because I mentioned in our description, I used the word Christ-centered. So it's very denominational. But you are Episcopalian, right?
I mean, as an Anglican. But that's what we called it where I grew up. But in America, it's called an Episcopalian. But the Episcopal Church kind of broke away from the British Anglican Church in the late 1700s, right after the Revolution. So it technically, we share a lot of, there's a lot. It's just weird kind of having grown up in the Anglican Church and now living in America and going to an Episcopal Church. I mean, you can definitely tell that there's differences. But they're not huge. They're just enough that you kind of go, oh, this isn't what I'm used to.
But for those who are not familiar, could we say it's Catholic too?
Well, it's Anglo-Catholic, which is, it's part of what's called the Oxford movement, which is something that happens in England in the 1800s, which is an attempt to sort of re-Catholicize from a liturgical perspective the church in England. right? Because it starts off. I mean, the Anglican Church in England, the joke is it's a book of common prayer, not a book of common belief, and the whole political project is to sort of create this big, giant institution that can kind of fit everybody and stop these, terrible wars of religion that were going on. So just to create a big, broad church, we're going to build a big tent to try to get as many people in as possible, and then sort of put an end to the fighting. So it's about as Catholic as you can get without being Catholic.
Well, those distinctions are important. So my experience with the Christ-centered part is American Protestantism, Protestant, the American Protestant movement, but I guess Episcopalian kind of falls under that too, meaning they're non-Catholic.
Those
Catholic distinctions are very important to some people.
The thing is, like, it's a big, broad tent. So there's like one of everything in there, right? I mean, you could probably find an Episcopal church in America that is very Pentecostal in its approach to liturgy. They'll have guitars and, PowerPoint slides on projectors and the big speakers and, some jacked youth pastor, rocking out to Jesus. But you can also find, high church smoke, bells, incense, liturgical stuff, which I guess I'm just familiar with it. So it feels like church to me, but not that I don't love a rock concert about Jesus, but it just doesn't feel like church. It feels like a rock concert about Jesus, which is cool. That's fun too. I like that.
Yeah, like I said, I think those distinctions are important to some people. The way
my evangelical friends think high church liturgy is weird. Like they're like, why would you do that?
I came from that background, but I could also appreciate a lot of other denominations now. Not back then when I started early. It was more like, well, you're not the right brand of Jesus.
Right. Well, nobody's the right brand of Jesus.
You're not the right brand of Jesus. But those distinctions, like people will go crazy over it. Just like what we're talking about the other day. What's the difference between a token and a coin?
Right.
Those splitting hairs is very important. How many angels can dance on the head of a pin? So those kind of questions.
The expression I like is the narcissism of small differences. When you can just get. But look, as you and I, like, as long as you recognize you're having a spurg fight and that you're just entertaining yourselves, that's fine. It's just when you kind of
you take out the lance and the shields and
right,
like put on a full suit of the knight armor. Spurg fight is something I like to think you coined. And that's a good way of describing you can use that for other things too. Besides,
I think I found it on the internet somewhere, but I don't think I made it.
Oh, really? It's not original. It's Spurg fight. Okay.
Maybe, but I doubt it. Only in the way that nothing is original. I mean, I didn't make up Spurg. Spurg has been out there forever, so I'm sure somebody thought to have a Spurg fight before I did.
Yeah.
But,
so we're back for an encore, which is new. Usually we do these once a week, but
I thought yesterday's was surprisingly good, given how we didn't really prepare and we just hadn't really done it for like 10 days, really.
I haven't watched the entire thing after you hit stopped. So whatever was good.
Yeah, I didn't actually set out to watch it. I was just making sure it worked, and then I started listening, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually more interesting than I thought it was going to be." So I was pleasantly surprised at ours. I'm not that we I'm not endlessly surprised by how awesome we are, but
well, each session that we do, it's an exercise for me to become more conscious of not just my facial expression, but what I say. So I'm trying to iron out all those stammers and long briefs and repetitions and open-ended things like that, so it'll get better with each session. But you wanted to come on again because you had some things to share on
Yeah, but
how.
I like your idea better. Let's talk about usability, because I think that is that's also more important for what we're doing right now.
Okay. So if
You're
anyone's
right.
watching this and you are like a crypto guy, you've been in this for a long, you may think like Perseus is like, what is he talking about? So this is my number one complaint. That day when you told me, Perseus, go and get a couple of EOS so we can start developing blockchain, I had to, I'm not kidding you, it took me 3 hours. It took me 3 hours just to like find out how to get on board. And I know for you, you probably like, what? Why did it why
No,
did it
it's
take him that long? But you take it for granted that there are a lot of people, and I consider myself more in the beekeeper demographic. And for people watching this, we will put down all these keys to these phrases we're talking about. I'm using beekeeper to refer to people who are non-techies at all. They don't care anything about the internet. They just care about literally harvesting honey from bee in the real world. Everything we
right.
do in dark world is to benefit people in the real world. It's not to create a virtual substitute of real world, because you can't eat pixels. You can't eat bytes. You need real food. You need you need real working policies to make life better for people. And dark world is about um,
Governing.
governing and putting where the priority and focus should be, and that digital stuff, crypto and what have you, should just be a means to an end. It should not be the end itself.
Right.
Though I could, like we were saying, we were imagining some people want it to be the ends, a world ruled by Skynet, but using the term from Terminator.
Well,
Or
it's kind of, what we've talked about before, which is if you don't really have a plan to govern, then it's fun to just go, oh, the blockchain solves that.
of course,
So you're like,
yeah,
well, what about racism? Oh, the blockchain solves that. Like, what? That doesn't even make any sense. So, whereas if you just don't let yourself say the blockchain solves that, you actually go, well, how? You have to actually come up with a way that a blockchain could solve that. Then, you force people, first of all, you force the vast majority of crypto enthusiasts to sort of admit they have no idea, and really what they like is the fact that Bitcoin seems to keep going up every day, and so they feel cool,
yeah,
they feel validated by that. Their decision to buy Bitcoin in 2017 was
right.
insight.
And we said that for something to become really useful, you need to have a type of quality to the data that's inputted, and those and what we want to do, they can only come from the people that are living real lives, right?
Like
Like
the
Mr.
beekeeper.
Beekeeper, yeah. Like so technology becomes interesting once they're more shaped by them, not by people, the tech bros, who just want to make a thing, attract attention from a VC, sold off, and become this. What did you call them? The Lambos and Hooker.
Yeah.
That's their end. That's their goal, and that's
I
not
mean, I
our
think
goal.
it's kind of that nihilist goal that, on some level we all think it would be fun to be Dan Bilzerian, but the reality is I think Dan probably spends a lot of his days just doing email and eating and going to the gym and trying to figure out how to manage his life, right?
Exactly, and we're trying to bring all this technology and closer to the people who we think can make the most meaningful use of it. But part
Well, also
of the
I think we're also when you put Christ at the center of what you're trying to do, what you're really doing is what I think we've talked before about, it's a logos machine, right? So what you're trying to do is reveal truth. And the point of it all is to sort of work towards a more truthful, a more authentic, a more meaningful, a more real experience in existence, right? So you're not just like the Lambo doesn't make you happy. Now, maybe riding around in a Lamborghini reveals some truth. I don't know. It's probably just mildly entertaining for 10 minutes until you go, that was cool. But I mean, it's technically sophisticated, so there's something appealing about that. But ultimately, you're looking for this revelation, this truth, and which comes through the logos. And that's where I think the technology, when the technology becomes a servant of that, or is placed in the service of that, then that's where technology gets interesting. But when the technology becomes the truth in and of itself, or replaces truth, then you're just in this kind of nihilist, pointless, like, I have a Lambo, therefore I am cool place, which just doesn't, sorry, dude, the Lambo doesn't make you cool.
So glad you brought up about Christ and Logos, because I think that is a good way of talking about usability too. In tech world, usability would be like the equivalent of, you need to go to the Temple of Jerusalem, Herod's temple, and perform all these weird maneuvers for you to finally access God. There are all these gatekeepers. You gotta you gotta buy a couple of doves, you gotta do this, make sure you just access through these special gates that's set up for you, Herod's temple. Whereas Christ said, you know what, I'm gonna come to you, you can hang out by wherever, the hill or somewhere under a sycamore tree, and I'm going to retell you these really complex concepts in parable form. That for me is usability. That's very like user-centric approach.
Right. Yeah.
And so what we want to do is not have a person, when we launch our token, which we're calling dark coin, but some people would take objection to that. Well, Darkma, we call it Darkma or dark coin. But I don't want them to go through like the 10 step that I have to, if they're not familiar with how to get a private key, how to get a public key, how to, write down 12 words for that, that thing, you got to write the 12 words, and then on top of it, the 26 words, and be sure you print it out and keep it in a safe place. Oh, and by the way, maybe you want to buy a hard wallet or cold wallet. No, none of that. Or if they had to go through that, we do what Jesus did. Think of some way to make it understandable for people in a parable form. We have to take technology and put it in a parable form so that people could run with it. You came up with a very good, an obscure example too in the Old Testament, Habakkuk. That's a good one too. What was that thing that you mentioned?
Plain the vision on the temple. Make plain the vision so that one that runs might read it. Basically, keep it simple enough that if a guy's running by and sees what you're doing, he can figure it out.
That's perfect UX right there, and usability.
So here's thank you. Here's a thought. Jesus says, whenever 2 or 3 of you are gathered together, I am there also. What about using that idea as a way to secure blockchain secure identity on the blockchain? So instead of having a private key, maybe you become my private key. So if I have to, every transaction I want to execute, I need you to go say, hey, Dave, is that really you? Would you really want to do this? And then I go, yes. And then you go, okay, click. And then you execute it as well.
That would fit our game narrative too.
It's a pain in the ass because I got to get you.
Actually, it's probably not a pain in the ass, but I mean, some criticism might be, well, you're kind of like introducing an intermediary now, but
maybe it's it's you and say a couple of other people, right? I mean, I don't need, or like one of 2 or 3 people I need who knows me can just look at that and go, yeah, that looks like something Dave would do. Click. Right, as opposed to being the individual that then has all this identity, because that way, at some point, like you know me way better than any bank could.
That's a great idea. I like that, because
that gets rid of the private key.
Well, not only that, it becomes a tool for community building. The community, right. That's a word that people use to death, but this is really, because just to sidetrack here, the word community used politics today has one thing that's missing that doesn't qualify as the word community, and basically it's accountability and equal responsibility, right? No, you always get these people who claim, well, I represent the community. You don't represent anyone. You're not accountable to anyone. So I like that idea, and I like that we can use the scripture to frame that.
Yeah, I like that. That was popped into my head as you were talking. Those people that you just talked about, by the way, I always say that they're the people that ran up to the front of the parade and held up a sign and said, I'm leading the parade. And it's like, no, you just ran up to the front and put up a sign. Like,
Yeah,
the parade just happens to be going on and you found it and then ran up to took over.
that's
Which
a
I'm
good
sure
that's a good use for a community. I like that. How it would.
we have the
Yes,
invitation process that I think we can use to sort of like, the people you invite, and then what we're calling the orders. So maybe it's somebody within your order has to approves what you do. And that way you don't have this kind of private key problem anymore where like when I got my new computer and I need to move my MetaMask account from
Oh yeah. Tell me
old
how long did
computer.
that take? How long did that
Actually,
take?
it was pretty quick because I just cut and pasted the
You
words
see, it's pretty quick for you because you're in the know.
because I
But
knew
a
how to do it.
beekeeper guy would just be grabbing his beehive and throwing the thing at the machine.
Right. But it would have been much easier if I just would have kind of said, if you got a ping that said, hey, Dave's trying to set up his account on a new, Dave wants to set up his account. And then you just texted me and goes, hey, dude, is this you? And I'd be like, yeah. Or I'm like, hey, Tom, I'm trying to do this. Can you authenticate me?
Yeah, I can already imagine.
Busy, dude.
I can already see some people watching this who do this as a reflex. Like, what are these two? Like, what are they complaining about? You know what? It is exactly that kind of attitude that is creating this two-class system. If you ask me, like, I take for granted that I know stuff, but 99% of the people, the beekeepers, I call them, the people who live in the real world, are going to be more and more marginalized, and this thing becomes more inaccessible. So I've made it almost my holy mission to make sure that that doesn't happen. Yeah.
Well, it's a part of, it's probably one of the, I don't know if it's an unintended consequence, but it's a consequence of the Enlightenment or liberalism, right, which places the rights of the individual as sort of more important than, say, the rights of a community, right? I mean, we have this kind of like human rights idea, but the human right it's a personal thing. It's not a group thing.
Yeah.
It's slowly starting to come back in weird and wonderful ways, right? I mean, you talk about, like Black rights or gay rights, but those are very, like, you get some, but even those turn into individual rights very quickly because there's no broad right that the Black community possesses. There's a right that a Black individual possesses that is maybe different by virtue of that person being Black, but they retain their individual character. And so that whole idea is deeply embedded within liberalism. And to some extent, I think it's great, obviously, for a lot of reasons, but it does kind of atomize people and sort of break them off from their communities, and make them easy. Obviously, if you can just make everybody an individual, you can pick them off one by one. Whereas if people form groups, they're much harder to beat up on because you suddenly have to fight.
But just to balance it out, I want to be clear: we're also not collectivist. To just
that the collectivist is it's sort of like the anti-liberal, right? I mean, the collectivist goes to the absolute opposite extreme and says the individual doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Whereas what you really have to do is, I think, to be, I mean, I just think common sense tells you that we're individuals, we're families, we're ethnicities, we're towns,
Mm-hmm.
we're affinities, affiliations. I mean, we've got many different ways we come together as creatures, and so we need just sort of political systems that reflect that, and just be individuals or just be one giant collective.
Yeah, well, so the way I see it is that I'm an individual I believe in individual rights, but I function within a co-op, a voluntary co-op, and that my aspirations and what I do has benefits to the, like
Okay,
what we're
but
doing right now.
right, but here's where this breaks down is, I think we were talking yesterday, it's the homeless problem in the big cities. Does some guy have a right to be a schizophrenic drug addict and poop on the street?
No.
A good liberal would say, well, we've got to respect that on some level, right? We've got to work with that. Now, a more sort of, I don't know what you want to call him, but a less liberal person would say, no, that guy's a freaking menace to himself and society. Like, we need to suspend his rights and we need to kind of help clean him up.
That would be actually a conservative. That's paradoxically some.
It's not conservative. It's anti-liberal, right? And it's not collectivist because you're not trying to force him into some totality. It's just it's again, I don't know what you would call it. It's more of a pre-liberal idea. It's more, you probably talk about it as communitarian, maybe. It's again those words are all so meaningless that I think it's hard to talk about them.
Yeah, I guess we're splitting hairs. So sometimes I just want to point out too, because I'm more for the evangelical background, and David is Presbyterian. We don't always overlap in some areas, but that's what makes us fun. That's why this is a co-op that works. This is a community that works. We're not the same pixels.
Exactly.
But going back to usability, the having a witness is a good workaround for the 10 steps to get a private key and public key. And
yeah, I mean, you could just make that whole process operate in the background, and so essentially you become my private key.
Yeah,
your humanity is the private key to my public key of my humanity.
Right. And that entails a high degree of trust in another human. And
I don't think it should be that high, because you need both, right? I mean, you can't. I'm not giving you power of attorney or anything. The only thing is I'm deferring. I'm giving you a little bit of authority to say, hey, Dave, maybe you shouldn't do that. Like, I'm not, like, I don't know, let's say I put in the transaction to get like some heroin because I need to feed my heroin addiction.
Yeah.
Maybe you as a respecter of individual rights, you should allow me to, assert my bodily autonomy. But as my friend, you should say, no, dude, you're not buying crystal meth today. Like, not approving that transaction. Bad for you. Or if I'm going to go buy a, Lamborghini and I don't have any money, I'm just going to go borrow like a couple $100,000 I don't have. You should probably say, no, I'm not going to play that game with you.
So do you want to diagram that out for me? This better and more efficient step, the dark world way of for Mr. Beekeeper to acquire his key, or for him to be able to get on this platform and start moving things around and transacting without having to go through 10-step.
If you want to read about it, these things exist. They're called multi-sig wallets.
Okay.
Which is just the term that they use now. But they're not popular because it's a very, what's the word? We're so used to the idea of having autonomy over our accounts that the idea that you would delegate authority to another person with anything respecting your transactional existence is bizarre to most people, right? It seems like, why would you do that? But I don't know. Because we're Christ-centered tech bros, Tom. That's why.
I put tech bros in our description, but I thought the better of it when I looked up the tech bros actually is a pejorative. So it's Christ-centered crypto tech guys. just because tech bro apparently refers to the people we were talking about earlier, the Lambos and the hooker crowd. It's stuck.
Yeah, but I like, Jesus walked with the sinners. I'm a sinner. I'm totally, I'm a tech bro. I'm,
No,
I don't
actually,
want
you're more of a tech bro than I am. So if people know about your your professional history, yeah. What do you
I
what do
just
you
don't
got?
want
What do you have on? Do you have that Hong Kong shirt on today?
a Hong Kong shirt on for you.
Gotcha. So I thought I was going to go on more of a rant about usability. I don't know why that took care of it.
I think we solved the problem. I hadn't really, it just popped into my head as you were talking. I hadn't really, maybe I was
Now,
like,
I just want to. So we are giving people that option. We're not saying that you have to do it one way or the other. I think like two options. Like, okay, if this is too much for you,
no, I think we should, look, if we're going to create a Christ-centered blockchain, then I think we need to have, to build some social accountability in there, right? I mean, at some point, I do want to give you, or I do want to give 2 or 3 of my brothers and sisters the power to stop me if I'm going to do something terrible. Like
what I mean is for people who are familiar with how to, or who have existing keys and all that, they don't have to.
I don't know. Maybe we want to think about that, but I like the idea of it creates a strong, it's part of your indie philosophy of building this sort of little, that Tocqueville United, little platoons of civil society, right? I mean, we don't want to. The idea is not to have a bunch of atomized individuals all lined up like little targets to shoot at. Because when some guy tries to, look, I'm human, I'm fallible. Some guy tries to sell me some crap. I go to buy it. I want you to go, no, don't. What are you doing? Don't buy that thing. It's like $30. It's stupid. Like, you don't even need it. What? Like, honestly, if somebody could if I had to get you to approve all my Amazon transactions, I think I would like literally cut in half the amount of money I spent. Because you'd be like, what are you buying that for? And be like, I don't know.
That coincidentally forms the shape of our logo, the Dark World logo, which is a three-pointed shape, the triangle, an inverted triangle. So the Trinity.
The Trinity, right? So we want 3 people. So it's you and 2 other people, and one of those 2, you only need one of the 2 people to agree. And you can change. You can have different people, right? I mean, if you want to go and like get all your like retarded drug friends to be your group, then I guess you can do that, right? If you think that's a good idea, but
that's so is that unique? Would that be unique to Darkwell? What you just proposed?
Yeah, I think. Well, it's very post-liberal, right? To sort of say, well, your financial life needs a third party to kind of say, hey, no, you can't, or maybe you can. I don't know. We can. I'll draw it up. You can think about it. I know you're building this now, so
I'm building this slowly. By the way, it's
right. That's what I mean. We got time. We're not. But we're so this kind of leads in, and maybe we want to just tee this up and then have this conversation next week. But this leads into so now that we can create Darkcoin through asset securitization into a multi-sig environment. There, I used lots of big words there, but what I really want to do is figure out how to stop people from just like going and creating 1,000 Darkcoin and then finding some exchange, selling them on the exchange, because they want to go buy some Bitcoin because they think Bitcoin's going to appreciate at a faster rate than Darkcoin, or pledging their Darkcoin to buy Bitcoin. Essentially, kind of not using to make it costly and unattractive for people to speculate on Darkcoin and to sort of drive people into doing things that are productive.
Which is every other coin's activity now exclusively is
It's
to
just a big
speculate.
giant casino. So we want to, we're not looking, we want to have, again, that's why I like our media sort of project, because essentially you can use Darkcoin to fund storytellers.
Yeah.
So I think that so there's there's the investment piece, but at some point people need to consume because they need to buy food and eat and stuff. So we got to have a way to exit. It's a capital controls problem, right? I mean, how do we stop people from exiting our world with their currency in order to consume, which is fine, people need to eat, but we don't want them exiting our world in order to speculate or to look for just like higher risk, higher return environments, which frankly is what Bitcoin is right now, right? It's just a very poor risk adjusted investment.
I think, like I said, we have to, our video descriptions will probably become long because we will have to put links in to describe what we're talking about. People don't even know what we're talking about, some of the stuff, but this channel is building up to a, what did I used to call it, a Noah's Ark or a cathedral, or this thing we're building. So you may be coming onto the scene like, what is going on, what's taking shape, but we'll make sure that the pieces are all explained, labeled, and accounted for, so you know where you're talking, and when it's launched, it's like, yes.
Or you could just like write us a comment and go, what does that mean? And I'm sure Tom or I will be happy to explain it to you too, if you.
I was going to ask, did you want to disable comments or you want to leave? Because you know what it is, like once you open the comment, anything
wants to spurg out in our comment.
Spurg out in the comment or
spurg away, dude. Spurg on.
Yeah, what we will not get into, like if I will not get into long debates with people or
maybe, I don't know, it depends if it's fun.
Well, that's your department then. I don't know how to.
All spurgs.
I'm not expecting any comment. Ideally, we don't get any comments. It just means that
got one.
You got one?
Yeah, one. We have one comment.
When?
It's positive. I don't know. It was like a few weeks ago.
Really? What? Someone left a comment.
Somebody was like, "Yeah," he was like, "Great, go."
Are you kidding? Really? Someone put a comment. I don't watch. So the thing is, when we record this to put it up, it's just like you hear a lot of actors. That's a little too much. Like they don't watch their own movies. So I don't watch any of this except to update the description and the title, to revise the title. So David will be answering your comments.
I will.
Yeah, but no,
I don't get into.
Yeah, don't get into any theological debate, because, like I said, I think everyone who's watching this, you're actually very well represented here. I come from the evangelical deist side, and I hang out with a lot of atheists too, and a lot of other things, and David also represents the more Trinitarian traditional side, the whole bunch of other stuff. So,
right, even
if you say anything that press your button or the wrong button, then
bring the fight. Yeah. You'll find somebody here to agree with you and disagree with you.
Oh, and how's this? And the more likes you hit in this video, that's a reservation for future Darkma or Dark coins.
Really? I don't think it changes our life at all. Don't hit the like button. We don't really care.
No, we don't. Most of the Anyway, yeah. So we're this is.
We'd rather you came Pong out and played.
Yep.
All right.
So we good?
To wrap this up, and that was good. Boom, boom, boom.